All right, guys, third and final video on elasticity of demand. All right, the first, in our first film, we defined elasticity and looked at its determinants. The second film we looked at how do I calculate elasticity. This is all from a consumer's perspective. In this last one, we are going to look largely at this from the business perspective. How much, when I look at price times quantity, what does that do to the total revenue? It's really important for a business to know if I increase the price, if I decrease the price, what's going to happen to the amount of money I bring in. Okay, so for that, we're going to look at an example, and we're going to identify where revenue, what revenue indicates in terms of the elasticity of demand. And it's pretty much a straightforward concept. Right? If I look at the jump between 2 price points, right? If my total revenue is increasing, I've got inelastic demand. Whereas if I look at the jump point if I go between 2 price points, and my total revenue is decreasing, I will have elastic demand. Another way to state that is as my revenue is increased, as I go from one price to another, as price increases, if my marginal revenue, the difference between the two revenues, is positive, I've got inelastic demand. Or as I increase my price, if my marginal revenue is negative, I've got elastic demand. And if there's no change, then I've got inelasticity. All right, the best way to go about doing this is to look at a schedule. So here I've got this, and I pulled this straight out of your textbook. Prices of a slice of pizza, quantity of slices demanded a day, total revenue. So here you can see it goes from $1 to $6. Quantity demanded drops by 50, 300, 250, 200, so on down to 50. So what I've got highlighted here are 3 different bands of different price points. And let's talk for a minute about them. So here in this green band, I've got a $1 for a slice of pizza. I've jumped from $1 to 300. I have 300 slices that I'm selling in a given day. That's $300 in total revenue. I make the move from 2 to 250. That's $500 in total revenue. That's an increase of $200 or positive marginal revenue. That's going to be inelastic demand. When I go from $3 to $4 and my quantity differs by 50 again, 200 to 150, in both circumstances, 3 times 200, 4 times 150, I have $600 in total revenue. No change, unit elasticity. Last one here, from 5 to 6, I go from 100 to 50, or from 500 back down to $300 in total revenue when you do the math. Here now my total revenue is decreasing, or my marginal revenue is negative. In that circumstance, I have elastic demand. Why is that? It goes back to the fact that we're dealing with percent changes of quantity. All right? When I look at the first set here, from 300 to 250, all right? While I'm dropping by the same 50, that 250, that drop is a relatively smaller percentage of the quantity demanded. That loss of 50. But by the time I get to the bottom end here and I'm going from 100 slices to 50, I've lost half my total sales. That's a huge percent drop. All right? So this is why something like this is occurring. So when you look at this, all right, depending on whether total revenue is increasing as price increases or decreasing as price increases, you can see the inelastic versus elastic demand. We can represent this graphically as well. It's really kind of hard to see, but if you look at here's my old price, new price, here's my curve, you can see it's kind of vertical, so where it's inelastic. This is this gap here is the extra revenue you get from selling at a higher price. This gap here is the lost revenue you have from fewer units. Taking price times quantity, looking at the area under the curve. And you can see that A is bigger than B. Whereas in the case of elastic demand, notice that this curve here is flatter. B is bigger than A. So that indicates that this revenue is a bigger deal. All right, so that's elasticity of demand vis-a-vis total revenue. The only other thing just kind of left to mention offhand is there are other types of elasticities. There is the income elasticity of demand, which is how much of a quantity demanded of a good responds to change in income. That's percent change in quantity demanded divided by percent change in income. There's also cross-price elasticity, which is how much of a quantity demanded of one good responds to a change in the price of another good. What we've got here is we talked about how a determinant of demand is whether or not goods complement each other, hot dogs and ketchup, or whether or not goods are substitutes for each other, hot dogs and hamburgers. What this tells you is if the price of a hot dog goes up, what will that do to the demand for ketchup? Or if the price of a hot dog goes up, what will that do for the demand for hamburgers? How sensitive am I, how quickly am I to swap these things out? And so this is percent change in the quantity demanded of the first good divided by the percent change in the price of the second good. We'll do a little bit on this, but the price elasticity is the much more important thing. All right, so let's now recap all three lectures. The first thing is that we looked at sort of price elasticity of demand, and that measuring how much quantity demands responds to a percent change in price. Percent change in quantity divided by the percent change in price. How flexible, how rigid are we? Demand tends to be more elastic if substitutes are available, if goods are luxurious, if you've got a more narrowly tailored market, if you've got a bigger time horizon, I can do things in the long run, and if it's relatively important to the size of my budget. And lastly, from the business side of the house, if as price increases, my total revenue decreases, I have elastic demand. If the reverse is true, when price increases, total revenue increases, I have inelastic demand. All right, that very rigid vertical demand curve. All right, this is a lot. This is pretty much the totality of elastic demand. You've got a bunch of problems to look at, and I wish you luck with them. And pretty soon we're going to be talking about the elasticities of supply. Thank you.